Hello, everybody. This is the June 8th We the People Meet .org interview that we're going to have with several of the local candidates here. I'm Rob Crawley, the founder of the We the People Meet .org. The purpose of this group is to allow people with differing beliefs and opinions to be able to get together to discuss in a respectful manner the differences of opinion to hopefully bring people together that have been driven apart based on philosophical differences. And by the way, I'm reading this intro, and I told all the candidates I would read this intro before we start with their interviews. So I believe we are all more alike and aligned than we may think. I am also a father of five, owner of seven businesses, board member of Utah Conservatives, a political action committee, president of the Highland Alpine Chamber of Commerce, and a state delegate in the 25 HIO9 precinct. This email is open to this interview is open to the general public to join. I prepared most of the questions. Each candidate has permission to submit one question that they and their opponent can answer. Because there is only 15 minutes or less for each candidate, we ask that you keep your answers concise and keep them to less than 1 minute. Because each of you has been involved in publicly available debates recently, the longer conversations can be viewed there, and this will be viewed more as a post-debate question and answer session. Each candidate will join the meeting only for their 15 minutes or less interview and will leave the meeting at the end of their approximately 15 minutes, and so that they're, each candidate can feel like it's their time. So anyway, so we're going to get started, and Tracy Nuttall is our first candidate that has joined us, and she is running for the Utah State School Board District 11. Thank you, Tracy, for joining us, and thank you for running. This takes a lot of courage. I ran for political office once, and it takes a lot of courage and a lot of determination to get this far. And I appreciate your efforts and appreciate your service for the community. So,
I'm happy to commiserate.
yeah, it is difficult, and it is truly a service. So appreciate you. Um, Having said that, it's a service and it's difficult. What made you want to run?
Oh, sorry, getting messages over here. Yes.
No problem.
Well, first of all, let me just say thank you, Rob, and thank you
Mhm.
to We the People Meet. What you just said really resonates with me. I do believe that we have more in common than apart, and so it just means a lot. And to Rob's credit, he had to chase after me a little bit to get a time that works. So I just wanted to make sure that I said thanks for that. So, I'm a mom of three kids. They're all in public school, and I'm a product of public education myself. So I think I'm running because, well, I don't think, I know I'm running because I care about public education and I care that kids get the education that they need. So it's really important to me. Public education or education doesn't look the same for everyone. That's what I'm seeing as I talk to lots of people, that kids need different things, and I'm okay with that. I just want to get out there and make sure kids have what they need, and we have a lot of parental support in schools.
Sounds good. Okay, I appreciate that. All right, so we're gonna get into the questions. So, um, the founding fathers talked about separation of church and state as because historically, when church and state were combined, it gave too much power to the government. Some have used that argument to remove God from all teaching and discussions in our schools. And I've read reports that violent crime did increase in the decades following the landmark Supreme Court ruling Engel versus Vitale. It's been debated all the different reasons why crime has increased during that period, but some have speculated it might be because of God being taken out of the schools. Anyway, what's your opinion on that? And is there a way to include God in the schools?
Thanks. Well, yes. Well, I'm a woman of faith myself, and I obviously teach my kids about my faith, and so that's really something really important to me. Um, I think in schools it's tricky. We want to talk about, we want to be fair because we believe, and as a person of faith, I believe in religious freedom myself, and so we want to make sure that, I don't think we want to take God out of the conversation, but we also just want to be respectful of other people's beliefs and make sure that we're balancing those two things.
Sounds great. Thank you. Um, Second question is related to that. Um, Evolution versus creation. I believe, I'm throwing out my opinion here a little bit. I believe if we teach evolution without including God, then we are basically teaching atheism. Um, and so I'm wondering, what's your opinion? If one is taught, should the other be taught too as equal and separate ways that you can believe
As far as creationism and
in
evolution.
evolution? Should they be taught side by side, or should one or the other, and which one be taught by itself?
Well, I believe in helping kids to develop critical thinking skills. And so I think it's important that they have different ideas, but once again, they're also under 18 when they're in K through 12. And
Mhm.
I think that there's a balance to be found there. This is one of those sensitive issues that's really important to parents. And so it's one of those issues that I feel like I would love to see talked about on the local level between parents, teachers, and administrators. And it may be that different schools or different districts come to different understandings of that. To me, that's really important that we get the people on the ground in the schools who have their kids in the schools to talk about that. I think there's different ways to balance that, maybe not just one.
Yeah, okay. Um, I like straight answers. Was that an I don't know, a yes, or a no? Should they be taught side by side?
Well, I guess I'm not an educator myself, so I haven't tried to teach one or the other in school. So I would say part of the answer is I'm not sure
Okay.
because I just haven't tried to teach those in school. I think that parents should have a say in that, and teachers should tell us what's working, what's not working, and what's coming back from some parents versus the other parents, and have a good discussion about that.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay. Um, should transgender females be allowed to compete in girls' sports? What's your opinion on that?
Well, that is against the law in Utah right now, and
Mhm.
I'm supportive of that law. That is one law. I thought about that because, as you know, what I was just talking about local control, and I care a lot about local control and getting, so that parents and teachers can have a say at the local level. But
Mhm.
this is one issue where I feel that it needs to be made at the state level because it affects sports teams across the state, right? The different schools teams play each other. So to me, that's fine, and I respect that law. And yeah, I guess that would be my opinion on it.
Sounds good. Okay. Um, so next is, what have you done before and during your campaign to get to know the families, teachers, and schools that make up our school board district and to learn about the issues specific to our area?
Thanks. Yeah, this is a really, really important question to me, as you know. So I'm a mom of three kids, like I mentioned before, and they're in public school. And they're in public schools in this area. We moved here in 2013, and my oldest was not in kindergarten yet, and so she's had her whole public school experience here. Now she's a senior at Lone Peak. Um, so I've been in the schools with my kids, seeing what's going on and having relationships with other parents. I've been in school community council. I even did a year of PTA. Um, and also I have tried to really run this campaign. I said this in the debate in the way that I would be a member of the state board, which is trying to find out as much as possible from the people on the ground, which is parents, kids, students, teachers, everyone, how is public education going right and how is it going wrong? And
Mhm.
so that's really important to me. So at convention, I called over 300 delegates personally. Um, I went to about 20 SCC meetings in 2 weeks back in March just to hear what was going on in the schools. I went to Aspen Peak board meetings. To me, it's really important, especially when you have an elected office at the state level, that you know what's going on the ground and that you continue that. And after the election, I plan to come up with advisory boards and do what I need to do to help keep the conversation going. Like for me, one of my greatest concerns is that I don't know how to access homeschool parents. How do we get them involved in the conversation? They don't have as much organization as others do. And so I'm really committed to hearing from everybody and making those decisions on the state board.
That's great. Thank you. Um, okay, my next question is, will you vote for an increase in taxes related to schools in this area?
Well, the state board doesn't levy any taxes, so I can confidently say no, I will not vote for a tax increase. But
Mhm.
I will mention that I Rising taxes is really important. It's like really scary in our areas right now. I just had a long conversation with a voter in our area
Mhm.
who's really struggling under the burden of the taxes right now, and I'm really sympathetic to that. And I think we do one of my passions and um, one of the most important things to me is wise use of taxpayer dollars. So I would go that direction to say we need to make sure that taxpayer dollars are being used and not just ask for increases across the board every year. We need to make sure that we're going back. And a lot of my experience in working for the legislature, drafting public education bills, and also working for the state board with their administrative rules, is being able to read those and clean them up and hopefully get rid of as many things as we can. But there's not a lot of people who actually have that skill. And
Uh,
so that's why I think I would be a real asset to our community because I could help clean things up and that would really help us to save taxpayer dollars.
Good. Next question is, do you support school vouchers and or tuition tax credits for those who choose to go to a private school or a homeschool instead of the public school system?
Well, what I usually say about vouchers is this. Vouchers use taxpayer dollars. And so whenever we have use of taxpayer dollars, we want to see in education, we want to see a couple of things. First of all, we want to see that the dollars are being used wisely, right? And second of all, we want to see that the kids are learning something. So parent choice is really important to our district, and I have heard that over and over again. I will never forget it, and I will not leave it alone.
Mhm.
But I think that's the balance that we find in vouchers is, we're using taxpayer dollars, so let's make sure we're using them as wisely as we can. I don't know what the answer is on the second piece, which is how do we know our kids are learning something? Because assessment is the one thing that everybody disagrees on, or everybody agrees that they don't like in for one reason or another. But that's something I'd love to look into at the state board and see what we can do about that.
Thank you. Okay. Um, my child personally was encouraged to think about gender as a choice in one of her classes in high school, when he or she may not have otherwise considered it. Should any curriculum include sex and gender topics, and to what extent?
Hmm. I mean, again, that's a tough one to say across the board. Like my experience in policy is that it's hard to make a black and white rule about when that should be done. But again, as a person of faith, as I mentioned earlier, when I'm teaching my kids something at home, I don't really want them to go to school and be taught something that's directly opposed to that. So again, I would open up the conversation to say this is something that needs to be talked about and it needs to be if that happens, that needs to be talked about to the teacher, to the principal, and we need to figure out what's going on there. Definitely teachers, I think teachers must be accountable for what they're teaching in their classrooms, and they must be intentional about the things that they say and the curriculum that they use. That's really important to me. I think sometimes teachers are overburdened and, under overworked and underpaid, but we still do need to require that they're intentional about the things that they say and they teach and the materials that they use. Because I want to see that local control. I want to see that flexibility. But the balance to that flexibility is to make sure that we have accountability and intentionality.
Sounds great. Okay, and a question that I have is I've heard, and it may not be true, it may be true, I don't know, but so MWEG, that group has, it seems like they've been more left-leaning, and I say that because, you judge a tree by its fruit. They pushed really hard to get redistricting done, which resulted in the Democratic Party having more power here in Utah. That's a result of the work of MWEG, at least their efforts. And I don't know if that's going to continue, that they'll continue to push, not the conservative side or not the Republican Party, but something that helps the Democratic Party. But are you a member of that? And what if you are, what are your goals in being a member of that?
Thank you so much for asking that question, Rob. I appreciate that a lot. A lot of people like to talk about that behind my back and not really ask me to my face.
Well, you
So
should be able to defend yourself,
thank
if people are
you.
saying that. And people have said that to me. So I just want to see if it's true and what you view it as, if it's not more of a liberal or fighting against the Republican Party. So yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you so much. I appreciate
Mhm.
the opportunity to answer that question. So
Yes.
yes, MWIG started, I can't remember what year, and I was interested in getting involved in grassroots organizations to see what was going on. So, as you know, they are specific to women who are members of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints getting involved on a grassroots level. And that was something, as a woman of faith, that was something that appealed to me. So I got involved. They were really excited about my experience. So I quickly came into leadership and I ended up on the board. Now,
Oh,
when the board voted to uh yes, so when the board voted to be involved in the redistricting litigation, I resigned. So that was the end of my time on the board, and it was because of the redistricting litigation that I did resign.
uh,
So I mean, I'm not here to say what MWEG is because I know that they see themselves as nonpartisan,
mhm.
that's how they've touted themselves. But I will say that that was several years ago. It happened before the redistricting litigation. Um, and also, sorry, I just lost my train of thought here.
You're fine. Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that happened before the redistricting litigation, and I would say also just a couple other things. That was several years ago, and so the organization has changed quite a bit as far as I can tell.
Uh-huh.
At the time, they were more focused on national issues, and I was actually more interested in helping Latter-day Saint women run for office and lo state and local issues. I ended up going to teach adjunct at BYU Law School, at state, and I taught state and local government law. So it ended up being not the right fit for me at that time. So that's how I would just explain the situation.
Okay, thank you. And we're running late. Brady's in the room waiting to join. So just 15 seconds. Any last things you want to say? And thanks again for what you're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate this opportunity. I would love to earn your vote. I would encourage everyone to reach out and call me personally and have a conversation with me. I'd love to hear again what you think is going right in education, what's going wrong, and I just appreciate your time to listen today. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Yeah. Okay. Next we will bring Brady Brammer on and Tracy, if you want to drop off, that would be great.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you. See you. Hi, Brady. Hi, Brady. Are you there? Brady, can you hear me? There
Yep,
you
I
are.
got you. Can you hear me all right?
Yep, I can hear you. Thanks for joining.
Thanks.
And we skipped the introduction with you because we did that on the first, which put us behind a few minutes, but
All right.
we'll try to give about 14 minutes to each candidate. So
Sounds great.
um, so we'll just jump right in. And I just want to thank you for being willing to sacrifice your family's time again. You know, you've done it for years, and I appreciate your family sacrificing for you to be member of our Congress and for the work you put in over the years. So
Oh,
thank you for that. Having served,
thank you, and
it's
thank
not.
you for this service.
Yep, no problem. Okay, well, I am going to just jump right into the questions because we
All
got a
right,
lot of
let's
good
go.
questions and we want to see what your answers are. So, um, number one, how do you judge your success as a state senator?
I think you have to look at a few things. I think the first thing is, are you adhering to the principles that you ran on as far as, are you doing what you said you'd do? And
Mhm.
number two, are there measurable benefits of the things that you've been doing? And so as far as my personal success, I ran on, let's first talk about fiscal conservatism. I ran on let's make things more affordable for families. And we've had tax cuts that save the average family $700. I ran on, hey, let's uphold family values. I think one of the things is the influence of vaping really, really reared its head in while I've been in office, especially among junior high kids. And we've decreased vape sales by 66% based on a bill that I sponsored. And let's clean up Utah Lake. And, it's the cleanest it's been in 100 years. I created the Utah Lake Authority. It got, this year alone, our federal delegation, because the authority exists, they were able to put $14 million towards Utah Lake Authority improvements. And so we're really working hard on all of that. So, in terms of success, it's did I do what I say I do and is it measurable? And I think we're doing quite well that way.
Perfect. Thank you. The next question, do you support overturning SB 54, which is the law that made it so there's a dual path to gaining political office? or do you support the convention only path? Or either way. So I said the
Well, I
same
guess
thing.
those are both the same
Yeah, they're
question,
both the same question.
depending on,
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah. Yeah, I do support overturning SB 54, but I would do it with one caveat. I
Mhm.
think that we do need to have more participation in the caucus system. So
Okay.
if we're going to overturn SB 54, we need to really work hard on getting people out to caucus. It needs to be a community event and not an event of, only the few. And so I'd want to expand how many people are actually attending caucus, make it a better environment that way, so that we get all of those voices in caucus.
Mhm. I don't like to throw my opinion out in question and answer like this, but I will say that if there's teeth to it, if SB 54 is taken out, then I think that encourages people to participate. It's when the
Yeah,
teeth are taken out, people are like, well, why should I go? Someone's just going to get votes anyway. So anyway, my opinion.
yeah.
Sorry, shouldn't do that. All right, my next question. Voters expect elected officials to be transparent, consistent, and respectful of public and private rights. Should an elected official pass retroactive laws, change rules in the middle of a conflict, or limit public feedback by deleting or disabling comments on official social media pages?
Sure. So it depends on what you're doing. As far as social media pages, what you're talking about there is social media can be good and bad, but typically what you want to do is get the information out. It's not exactly the best forum for good debate. You end up with, you know, like for example, I work really hard against vape companies and against vape stores. We shut some down, and what ended up happening was I posted about it, and then I've got all these, vape shops that are from out of my district that are crowding in and putting obscene things on my social media. And
Hmm.
so I can't keep my social media open in that way. Now, on a one-on-one basis, absolutely, and we need to hold town halls, we need to be there, in person, but social media has not been proven to be a great forum for mature debate in all circumstances. And
Right.
so that's what, most people have had to kind of shut down some form of the social media forum. Now, as far as bills and things like that, it depends on the circumstances. There are, we are authorized by, in our Constitution and otherwise that we can do retroactive bills, but it's generally not favored. And so we don't do that a lot. But there are circumstances where if there is an interpretation of a bill that was never intended by the original sponsor, by the legislature, it is perfectly appropriate for the legislature to say, this is what we meant from the beginning and put that in the bill. And so, if you're looking at legislative intent, there's nothing better about legislative intent than the legislature voting on what their intent was by making it retroactive to the point that they were voting on.
That makes sense. Okay, next question is Mike Kennedy passed a bill that banned trans surgeries for minors. Do you support a complete ban on trans surgeries for minors?
Yes, I believe that it is something that a minor cannot give consent to a doctor for a
Mhm.
life-altering decision. They have to wait until they're the age of majority, meaning 18 and older, before they can even begin that process. I don't think that it's appropriate for minors to be having that kind of surgery that can impact their ability to have kids their whole life, that can impact their bone density. There's some real problems, and we're seeing that come out more and more as we hear about it. And so, yes, I do support a complete ban on trans surgeries prior to adulthood.
Okay. Next question is tell me about your beliefs regarding parental choice in education.
Yeah, the parents are the driver of education. It's parents and schools support the parents in that education, so they need to be able to make choices as to where their children attend school. We've had circumstances where there's bullying in a school. We had a bullying situation in a public school, and we took our kids out and put them in a charter school. We had another situation where they were in a charter school, and there was a bullying incident, and we took them out and put them in a public school. And you're just trying to find the right fit for your kid. And sometimes that's public, sometimes it's charter, sometimes it's private, sometimes it's homeschooled. And the parents have a constitutional right to determine what their children, like the education of their children, and they need to be able to exercise that right.
Okay. My next question is related to my first question. How do you judge your success as a state senator? I tend to really like a group called Grassroots that tries to keep people sticking to constitutional control or lower government, less government type of deal. Um, I didn't look up your rating before this interview, so I really didn't know how you lined up. But I'm pleased to find that you're at 89% of the time that you have agreed with the grassroots group, which tells me you're one of the more conservative of all the senators in our state, which that you'll be pleasing the
Yeah.
conservative constituents for sure. Um, so can you tell me when you have disagreed with them? Because you're not 100%, but what kind of things have you
Sure.
disagreed with grassroots on before?
So my philosophy with those scorecards is I don't look at them.
Uh-huh.
And so I don't know exactly where they went. I'll look at the final score, but I try to have my principles and I vote according to the principles that I have.
Mhm.
Now, they're probably a very rigid, here's the constitutional thing as they see it. But
Mhm.
I believe that you have to have two things going on. Number one, you have the principles that you ran on
Mhm.
and the principles that you believe are constitutional, but you also, within that constitutional framework, you need to have a society that works,
Yeah.
where the highways run, the those that are disabled receive the support that they need, the schools receive the support that they need. It all has to work, or else you're not worthy of continuing on. And so
Mhm.
some of that is going to be a compromise. And there are places that you do have to compromise between what is the ideal and what makes it work. And you're trying to get there in a constitutional way. And so to the extent there's disagreement, it's because I really care about making sure it works for the common person. And you just have to find that balance.
Right. Sounds good. Um, I'm going to ask four questions, kind of rapid fire, and just want you to, keep these answers to maybe 15 seconds or less, because you could go
Sure.
off on any of them, and then we wouldn't have time to ask all of them. So, what made you want to run again?
I do care about serving. I've enjoyed serving, and I feel like I have more to do. In the Senate, it does take time to be able to make your imprint within the Senate. It just takes time and seniority to get to where you can get the road funding and the resources to your area that you're pushing for.
Okay. Two, did someone ask you to run? If so, who did?
In my very first election, the first person to ask me to run was Dan Hemmert, who was the senator over my area at the time.
Mhm.
And when Mike Kennedy retired to run against Mitt Romney,
Uh-huh.
Dan Hemmert asked me to run, and then there were a few others in my community, but he was the first.
Gotcha. Thank you for sharing that. Um, who has funded your campaign?
There's been a whole host. Probably the biggest is my Senate colleagues.
Mhm.
They have their own PAC. They raise money, they contribute money in, and they've funded a good chunk because they believe in me. They believe in what I can do for the Senate and that I can help them. And then I've been funded by individuals. Rod Mann was one of the first people to contribute. I've got business owners, different businesses, different groups that they see that I'm fair to them. One of them said, "You're the person who tells me no the most, but you listen and you care, and I know that you'll have a reason for why you said no." And so, that's kind of my funders.
Yeah, thanks for your clarity and openness on that, all these questions. Um, what groups do you have loyalty to? And I know you have loyalty to the people first, and that's what
Yeah.
any politician will say whether they do or not. But do you have any loyalty to any other types of groups?
No, it needs to be citizens first. There
Mhm.
are principles that I have loyalty to,
Yeah.
not groups. And
Okay.
so, my principles align well with the Republican Party.
Mhm.
But to the extent that there's departures between the party or my principles, I'm going to stick with my principles. But by and large, they align as a Republican. I'm a standard, fair Republican. And so I have loyalty to the citizens. I have loyalty to my family. I have loyalty to, those common, my church. I do have loyalty to my church. It's not necessarily exercised through my legislative service, but there's loyalty there as well. And so, there's times where you're going in different interests on that and you're balancing all of that. But
Yep.
yeah,
Okay. Next, paper ballots versus electronic. How do you feel about that?
I'm not a fan of electronic ballots. I will say that I do like people being able to receive their ballots in the mail.
Mhm.
And I think people like to be able to sit at their kitchen table and do their research. Internet research on candidates, on judges, on everything they're voting on has become a benefit for the citizens of Utah. Now, as far as returning those, if they're, I would prefer a return in person, like either through a ballot box or the day of elections. But there's a wide range of options and things to make sure that everyone feels like their ballot is secure. I don't think we've had a big ballot problem in Utah like some other people have that feel very strongly about. But I think we can always make improvements and we can make sure that everyone feels like their ballot is counted appropriately and is safe. And we need to do that.
Sounds great. Um, all right, I'm just gonna, yeah, actually, does anyone in the audience want to ask a question? Going, gone. Okay. Um,
Can I say one thing?
absolutely, if it's quick.
Representative Brammer, I just want to say thank you for your opinion on the ballots. I do appreciate that. I know sometimes it might not be the maybe the opinion that some other people have, but I really do appreciate that because I agree with you and it is. We love it. So thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, election integrity. Should elections be precinct centered or county centered?
I, you know, I like the community idea of precinct centered generally, and I think that we can staff it with volunteers. And so I prefer that, but
Mhm.
you're always looking at return on investment as far as how much it costs.
Yeah.
And you're always looking at the speed to count and the efficiency of it. And so I would typically defer to those, I'd have to get more input on what's the better system for both voter experience and security. But
Mhm.
those are the things that I would be weighing in making that decision. But I don't know if there's a big problem with voter security as if it's at the precinct level or the county. I think uh, we have some good systems. They can always be improved upon,
Mhm.
but I'm not sure which one is better on that.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions. I appreciate you coming on. Do you have any last 15, 20-second comment you want to make before I get our next person to join?
I'm really working hard to bring affordability to families. We want to make sure that the people prosper before the government prospers, and it's not the other way around. And so let's get the money to the people. They'll make more money with that money. It's an investment in them, and the government will get their little cut, and they'll do better on the back end. And so that's what I'm about.
Thanks for your service and appreciate you taking the time today.
Okay, thank you. And
Yep.
thanks for all your service on all of this. It's a labor of love. I
No
get it.
problem.
So, hey,
Okay. Talk
thank
to you
you.
later, Bree.
Bye.
Okay. Bye. Okay. Our next candidate is Terry Hutchinson. And I just have admitted Terry in. Terry, are you there?
Sec. Yes, hang on a sec.
No problem.
I mean, I jumped on a little earlier and I saw Tracy on it, so I thought I'd better. There we go.
Yep. Okay. Good to have you on here. And I first thing I like to do is thank people for their service. You've served a lot of years on school boards down in southern Utah, and so it's a challenge. I've served before, and it was a challenge on my family and on me. So I appreciate all the years of service you've given, and appreciate the sacrifice you make for doing this.
Thank you. I did 8 years on a library board. And then before that, I did about 4 years on state and local board for a group that manages group homes for the disabled. And so the special ed kids really have a significant priority for me.
Awesome. Well, I'm going to jump right into questions because our time's short. I
Sure.
like to keep it to an hour
Absolutely.
between the four candidates so that we get viewers. If it's too long, we lose interest, right? So,
Actually, the longer I speak, the more people get interested, but that's just a feeling.
that's the opposite of me. People get bored of me quick. All right. Well, my first question is, our founding fathers talked a lot about separation of church and state, and that's because back then, the church and state combined in Europe and whatnot, and gave the government way too much power when the church was combining with it. Some have used that argument to remove God from all teaching and discussion in our schools. While what I've learned is that violent crime increased significantly in the decades following the Supreme Court ruling Engel versus Vitale. What is your opinion, and is there a way to include God in the schools?
I actually like what the state school board was just working on and
Mhm.
passed, I believe, last weekend. One of the state school board members who's endorsing me had asked me to take a look at it and give her some suggestions about that language. And I looked at it and it was really good. It says you can't prohibit religion, but you also don't encourage religion. You keep yourself in a neutral position. There is an appropriate place for it. So, for example, sometimes we had a faculty member who might have a religious objection to something involving a student whose parent wanted them to do a transgender thing. And I've talked about this multiple times. And so, I mean, obviously, the parents are involved. So we're not, my position is a parent should always be notified when something like that is going on. And if you're
Mhm.
going to undertake as a school to do that, you better have parent permission. In my opinion, and I think the Supreme Court's going to rule on that. But on the
Okay.
other hand, I have to be
Well,
fair
I'm
and give
I'm going
that
to
to the
cut you
other.
short real quick,
Okay,
and the
sorry.
reason I am is because we've got a
You
lot
got
of
lots of
questions,
questions. Okay, I get it. Let me
but
just say that we should honor those religious objections. We should honor religious observances as much as we can um, without disrupting the classroom. And really, we're there to not prohibit religion, but we're also not there to overly encourage it or overly encourage one religion over another.
makes sense. So this, my another question I have, I'm going to throw it after this one because it kind of leads in this question leads into that one. Um, I believe you are teaching the religion of atheism. This is my personal opinion. When you teach evolution without God, do you think evolution and creation should be taught side by side and given equal airtime in schools?
That's a more difficult one. It depends on what kind of textbooks you can get for that. I think even at BYU, and I've done a lot of studies on this, and on my radio programs in my local community, I've had professors on to talk about that, and that's just a really hard one, especially in the classroom from the K through 12 level. So I think you just give them an introductory of both.
Mhm.
In other words, for those who want it, you have it, and those who don't want it, you have it, and you let that mostly be discussed at home because there is a place to teach biological evolution, and then a parent can introduce the God aspect of it if they want to, and the teacher should be incredibly neutral and incredibly balanced. But that is a tightrope that we have to walk.
Right. Okay. Next, my child was encouraged to think about gender as a choice in one of her classes in school, and when he or she may not have otherwise considered it. Should any curriculum include sex and gender topics, and to what extent?
Well, we had a challenge with on our local board with AP psychology because the AP psychology textbook had a section about that very thing, and I disagreed with it. And when we at first were extra concerned, and then when we dug into it, we found out that the teacher was actually handling that appropriately with the class. I mean, sometimes you just can't avoid it because of the textbook you're using, especially at the AP level, or even worse, at the concurrent level where they're taking a college class. And so at that time, you really have to rely on your teachers and make sure that they're trained and giving the proper balance to that. So, or notifying the parents that, hey, this section is going to conclude this, and therefore the parents can be participating in that. It cannot always be avoided. Therefore, you have to address it.
Okay, we could probably talk for hours about curriculum by itself, but we're gonna not have that as a conversation in this. Next, should transgender females be allowed to compete in girl sports?
No, it's a student safety issue, period.
Mhm.
That's just that's the bottom line. It's a student safety issue for both of them, whether the girls want to compete with the boys or the boys want to compete with the girls. It just raises too many concerns for safety. And if you're all that concerned about it, you open up a third group. You've got boys sports, girls sports, and then you've got these two transgender sports in order for the safety action to take place. And then they can get the benefits of competition and training and everything else if that's what they want to do. And granted, that is going the extra mile, but that's an option that you can put in there.
Awesome. Thank you. All right. The next one. What have you done before and during the campaigns to get to know the families, teachers, and schools that make up our school board district and to learn about the issues specific to our area?
Well, I've talked to, a lot of people who call me with concerns. Most of them have come in from out of state and are asking me about these things. My daughter attended Sky Ridge for most of her high school career. She did graduate down in St. George. That was a family tradition. So the last quarter, she went down there and got her diploma. For me and my wife, I presided at her graduation. All four of her older siblings had done that, and that was very important to her. But I grew up in the Alpine School District. I know it. I love it. I know a lot of the traditions. And so I have talked to some of the administrators and teachers, at least as well as I can in the campaign. And I currently have grandchildren in the schools here in Alpine.
Great. Will you vote for an increase in taxes related to schools in this area?
No, unless it was necessary, but generally it's not. There's a lot of options you can do. On our local board, as I've plastered in my campaign materials, we built a new school every year without raising taxes. We changed millions of dollars in taxpayer interest. And so there's always a lot of other options you can do before you just pull the trigger on that.
Okay, thank you. Do you support school vouchers and/or tuition tax credits for those who choose to go to a private school or homeschool?
I've been one of the few people on local boards to say the money should follow the child. And I discount the arguments that it takes away from all the funding for schools, because a lot of times, if the funding is following the child, so be it. It provides for better competition, it provides for better education options, and especially for the parent's choice. Now, that being said, there's something about an accountability, especially when you take those credits and when you take those vouchers. And that's something that we really need to look at to make sure that the students are performing as well as possible.
Sounds good. I've been through all the questions that I asked the other candidate running for the same office, so I don't I think we went through them quicker with you. So I'm going to give you a little bit more time, maybe a minute or a minute and a half, just to tell more about what you want to talk about.
Well, as I keep telling everybody, I have been in the arena. I have made these hard choices. We were on a local board during COVID. We had to decide what we were going to do, how we were going to perform, and it required some tough conversations with other board members. I am a coalition builder, and I have access to it. My opponent says I called 300 delegates and I asked them what was going on in our community. I would just ask, why did 2/3 of them vote against her and vote for me after those conversations? I think one reason I'm just very decisive. I have a lot of experience convincing people about the best way to go. And if I lose, I pick up myself, I brush off, I don't hold a grudge, and I go back to work. Because education policy often takes a long time to change, even years, to get everybody on board. On the state school board, I have to get 7 other people on board with me. And that can be tough, especially when they come from such wide areas of the state and their constituents and their concerns are always a lot different than ours. But I focus primarily on this district, District 11, which is North Utah County, a little bit of Southern Salt Lake County. But I also have to do that in line with what's going on in the state. And I believe that by working with the 5 state school board members who are endorsing me, plus a few others, if we're lucky enough to get them elected, we can do some great things, and we can make the state school board do the things that brings trust from the legislature, so they don't pass so much educational legislation, and we can pass on that local control to the local districts, providing my 3 red lines are met: parents' rights and parents' choice. Protect those parents and give them the knowledge of what their kids are up to. Student safety, which includes not just physical safety, but some cultural things or dishonest things in education that can happen. And then last, academic achievement, which is so very important. And on top of that, when you do that and you have best practices, you can set good examples for local boards and save taxpayers money.
Sounds great.
Provide them more
Well,
tools to do it.
again, appreciate you sticking your neck out there and trying to serve again. So yeah,
Thanks.
appreciate all you're doing.
Alrighty. I
Okay,
appreciate that.
we'll talk to you
Thank you.
later.
You
Mhm.
bet. Thanks. Bye-bye.
All right. Um, I think Kelly Smith is our last candidate, and she says she is working on the app. So she's working on joining us here. In the meantime, does anyone have any comments you want to talk about while we wait for the next candidate to join? Um, oh, nope, here she is. Perfect. Hi, Kelly. Kelly, are you there? Let's see. Oh, ask to unmute. We will ask her to unmute. Hi, Kelly.
Hello.
Oh, there we
There
go.
we
Now we
go.
can hear you. How are you doing today?
Doing good. It made me re-download the app at the last minute, so sorry about that.
That's okay. It was 10 seconds of awkwardness is all, so it
Okay,
wasn't
there we
too
go.
bad.
And I wasn't even there for it, so it
That's
wasn't awkward for
right.
me.
Yeah, not a problem at all. So, anyway, thank you for being willing to serve and being, you're serving right now on the Cedar Hill City Council, right?
Correct.
So,
Yes, you know all about that.
yes, I do. So, yeah, you came in after me a few years, and
Yeah,
but yeah, I know how hard it is on families and individually sometimes to serve, and so I appreciate your willingness to serve in multiple areas, and yeah,
thank
just I
you.
really admire that. So
Yeah, thanks so much.
yeah, well, I'll just jump into it. We've got
Okay,
a few, we'll go a little bit over because we want to give everyone the exact same amount of time. I think we've given everyone about 13 or 14 minutes.
sure,
Uh,
appreciate it.
so I will ask you, first of all, how do you judge the success of a Utah State Senator?
I think for me, the success is how well you work with the community, what your constituents think about you. I think it's really important what your colleagues think about you. How you play nice with others. That's
Uh-huh.
a big deal because you are a group up there. You can't really do much by yourself without some buy-in from the other senators. But I would say, how well do the people who live where you represent them know you? What is your reputation with them? How do you treat them? What would they say about you to other people? I think that is the biggest litmus test for me.
Sounds great. Second question. Do you support overturning SB 54 versus the dual path to citizenship? Should it be convention only or should there be a dual path? Not citizenship. I said that wrong. I
Yeah.
meant to running for office and getting on the Republican Party ballot.
Yes. So, as probably most people know, I collected signatures in this race. I have also been an active party member. I have been a precinct chair. In fact, I had to be removed as precinct chair to run for this because you can't do both at the same time. So I have either been a delegate, a vice chair, or a precinct chair. So I've worked really hard in my own neighborhood to try and get people to come to caucus and to participate in convention. And I've always been there. And I chose to participate this time too because I wanted to reach every registered Republican. Now, I wish our registered Republicans would show up to caucus. I wish we had hundreds and hundreds of people who would show up to caucus and who would be involved in the process. But we know for some reason that's not happening right now. And so I feel like right now the dual path is kind of where we're at. I was involved back when it happened. And I know that there was a big push to get rid of the caucus system, which I was not in favor of. And so I know people disagree about whether that was a compromise, whether it saved the caucus system. The fact is, we still have it. Many states don't. And so I do value it. But at this point, we've got to figure out how to make it more relevant. We've got to figure out how to get our neighbors there so that it is actually representative of our community and what people want to see from their elected officials.
Great answer. Okay. Next, voters expect elected officials to be transparent, consistent, and respectful of public and private rights. Should an elected official pass retroactive laws, change rules in the middle of a conflict, or limit public feedback by deleting or disabling comments on official social media pages?
So I disagree with all of those.
Okay.
I think that if we think that something's important enough to put in place, I would say like in cities, if we put in a new zoning law, we grandfather the people who had that issue before, whether that's solar panels or giant gnomes in their front yard or whatever it is. We give people the benefit of the doubt that when that law went into place, it was legal. And so I would not write any retroactive bills. I would not do a bill that changes something that's in mid-process, whether that's a city that's working on an issue or it's something political that's happening that we disagree with. I think if we're going to make the law, we have to give people a fresh start. And I do not turn off or delete comments on my official social media. I think that's a great place for people to be able to participate. And even when they're angry, they need to have the opportunity to tell us as elected officials. That's just part of the gig.
Awesome. Thanks. Mike Kennedy passed a bill that banned trans surgeries for minors. Do you support a complete ban of trans surgeries for minors?
I do support that ban. I think we do a lot of things to protect children under 18 years old, and that to me feels like an adult decision. And so I want parents and medical providers to be able to work together, but the same way we do ear piercings and tattoos and other things that are permanent, I think those are adult decisions.
Great. Thank you. Um, Tell me your opinion about parental choice in education.
So we know that the legislature or our Constitution says that parents are the primary educators of their children. And as a prior school teacher, so a former school teacher, that was tantamount to me as I dealt with people's children on a daily basis, that I respected their wishes, the culture of their home, the things that they would ask me to do, whether that was treats or books or field trips, all of those sorts of things. I wanted input from parents. Now, can one parent dictate for the entire class? No, we know that that's not something that you can do. But should parents be able to decide for their children? I'll give you a quick example. My daughter went to Mountain Ridge Junior High, and they were doing a kind of a book club. And there was a book that I knew that she couldn't handle at her age, and I knew that as her mother. And so I said to the teacher, "Could you provide an alternate book for her?" And she did. And my daughter was really upset because all of her friends were reading the book she wanted to read. But I didn't let her read it. And the teacher was so kind to provide an alternate book for her. She gave us kind of a whole list. And she was able to recruit some other friends to read that book with her. So she had some other people. And as an adult, she has said to me, "I'm so glad you didn't let me read that book. I wasn't ready for it." And so I think as much as we can accommodate parents with as much local control as we can, and I think most teachers want to do that, we should absolutely be doing that. They know their children best.
That's great. I didn't ask this question to the other candidate because I didn't think of it, but I was a little bit involved in asking questions around the issue when there were some books that were deemed inappropriate for our schools, and a lot of people wanted those books to be taken out that some were offended by, and then kind of research whether they should be put back in. What they did instead, I think, is they left them in while they researched whether they should take them out. There's a
Mhm.
fine line between those two, but
Yeah.
they allow kids to continue to see the material that might have been deemed inappropriate while it's being reviewed. Which would you choose on that battle, the first one or the second one that I mentioned?
Yeah, that's a really tough one because it's this tug and pull between maybe one parent and another parent. And so, as we say that parents should be able to choose, I think where I would land more is for parents to restrict what their child can do rather than restricting what the whole school can do. I actually sat on the first committee that Alpine School District ever did for the books, and we ended up getting rid of a book, retaining a book, and moving a book up from junior high to high school.
Hmm.
So there was a wide opinion, and I found myself. I thought I knew how I felt before I went in on the process. And I kind of shifted a little bit as I went in to say, yeah, there are some things that are not appropriate for different age groups. And we have a limited number of books on the shelf. And so we want the books that are there for kids. I would love for them to all be books that any child could pick up. That would be my preference. But I do realize that that is a personal preference. And so I would rather have parents be able to restrict or limit what their child can have access to, especially maybe during that time period when we're not sure if a book should be there or not.
Makes sense. Okay. Next, have Have you heard of the group Grassroots that gives a report card for senators?
I haven't.
Oh, okay.
No.
Just a very conservative group and just wondered I've looked at it over the years and you've got report cards ranging from 0% to 89% on that and they're trying to keep people on the straight and narrow as far as following the Constitution and
Hmm.
staying with conservative values. I'd say they're very highly leaning Republican Party lean, very
Hmm.
conservative values. So
Uh-huh.
anyway, I would encourage you, if you get into office, to look at that list because that is what a lot of conservatives look at to determine if someone is, being conservative or not. So
Yeah, awesome. I'll do that.
not not a question, just a comment for you.
Yeah, no, great.
Okay, I've
I'm
got some
writing it down, Rob.
rapid fire questions that I want
Okay,
to throw out there. That keep your answers maybe 15 seconds, or else we won't get through all the
okay,
questions. So,
perfect.
what made you want to run?
So I think the big impetus for me was that this seat has not seen an election since it was formed. So since it was redistricted, we have not had this on the ballot for every registered Republican. They've been appointed through no fault of anybody, but it's just how it is. And so I wanted to make sure that we had a competitive race where everyone could weigh in.
So it's been Brady has had no one contending against him for several years. It's been
Right. But even when the seat was formed and made Senate District 21,
uh,
Dan Hemmert came over and then he went to the governor's office and then Mike was appointed and then
uh,
Brady was appointed. And
uh,
so I think that it's
that's
important. I think it's good for all
that's
of us as
valuable.
elected
Mhm.
officials to be accountable. And so I think races are just one of the ways we do that.
Yeah, good answer. Did someone ask you to run? If so, who did?
No, in fact, my entire family asked me not to run. So.
You're belligerent.
Yes, yes. I mean, I had local official friends. I have,
Well,
friends in my network that like, we think you'd be good at this. But my family was heavily opposed because of the service that I've already given. But
uh,
I just felt like it was really important. So it was more me.
okay. And then who has funded your campaign?
So my husband and I were saving for a deck. You'll have to see we have a pretty nice view out our back. So we've been saving for a deck, and we decided to use that for this race. So right now, I have a donation from uh, the engineers union, a small one. I've also got one from the Fresh Air Pack, which they work across both parties on environmental issues. And then my husband and I are self-funding. And then I just looked right before, I have 82 individuals who have donated. And I had to turn that in because it was so big as a spreadsheet to the
Yes.
lieutenant governor's office, and they have not updated it yet.
Oh, okay.
But those have all
And
come in through
then
Venmo.
do you have any loyalty to any groups in particular?
I do not. I do
Okay.
not. Nope.
Awesome. And let's see. Paper ballots versus electronic. What's your opinion?
For the regular election.
Yes.
Um, I
Any of
think,
the primaries or election, just overall.
yeah, I think we've come a long way with technology. I think we've proven over and over again that it's safe. I wouldn't necessarily be opposed to paper ballots as long as we had a little more of a window for people to be able to do that. I'm not a huge fan of the one day. I just know with elderly people and with people with jobs and small children and those sorts of things. I would really love to see us do paper ballots at the Central Committee. So if anybody can get that on the radar, I think that's one place we could easily do it, and we're not doing it there. So I would love to see us doing paper ballots at every function of the party.
Awesome. Um, Election integrity. Should elections be precinct centered or county centered?
Oh, interesting. Had
Because
not
it
thought
used
of
to be
that.
centered and then it went to
Hmm.
the county. And some feel that maybe it'd be a little bit easier to make sure there's no fraud because everyone's
Hmm.
ready at the precinct level. So that's
Yeah, I mean, I do love local control. So I think, maybe this smaller and more neighborhood based, we could make that. It might make people feel a little bit more confident about it. So yeah, I think precinct might actually be a really good idea. I think it would probably have to then go through something central like the county in order to verify or whatever that would be. It would probably need to be done, in small and then to large. But I don't think that's a bad idea.
okay. And then this is a question that I've heard, and I like to give a negative, and I like to give people a chance to defend themselves to see if it's
Love
true.
it.
But I have heard the Mormon Women for Ethical Government, MWEG. I have heard that you're a member of that group, and just from my perspective, it seems like they've been more on the liberal side, not on the conservative side of the Republican Party, or not even any party at all, but more on the liberal side. And by their fruits you shall know them. It seems like they pushed really hard for the redistricting, which resulted in more power to the Democrats and such. So just want to know, are you a member of that? And do you see that as a less conservative group if you are a member?
Yeah. So I joined their Facebook group about a year before I decided to run.
Uh-huh.
And just in an effort to learn more about government, that was kind of my first, like, I want to start learning about government. So I
Uh-huh.
joined their Facebook group. I'm not a member of their group. There's two different things.
Uh-huh.
So I haven't attended they have like conferences and those sorts of things. I have not been that involved. I have just been in their Facebook group. And I actually checked when someone else asked me about this. And the last time that I participated in the group was back in 2024, when actually I had a discussion with Nikki, who was in the group, about a number of different things. And so I have not been really involved since they started kind of getting, before that, they were more educational. And not so much advocacy. So I haven't really been involved since the advocacy piece of it. So,
Interesting. And when you say
yeah.
Nikki, do you mean Nikki Brammer?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify that.
So
There's a
that's
lot of
the
Nikki's
last
out
time.
there.
I just thought that was kind of a fun coincidence,
Uh-huh.
that when I went in to see how long has it been since I've actually been participating in the group, and it was back in 2024. So yeah, and I would say, having been inside the group, that's not that hasn't really been my experience. I think maybe from the advocacy side, that's maybe what people see from the outside. From the inside, it's kind of a nonpartisan, and actually there's some rules about being too partisan in the group. And so what I get as an elected official from that group is a really wide range of where are my constituents and where are constituents like them in my area, and what are their concerns. And it definitely doesn't mean I always agree, but it is a really good place, kind of like a giant suggestion box, just to see what are people concerned about, who come from a wide variety of parties, because that's what I have to worry about on a city level, is every single constituent. And it is a little bit of a different, a different take. So I would say there are many, many times when I don't agree, and I would say that happens a lot in the group, period. So
That's great.
you see a lot of disagreement in the group.
Well,
So
and it just so happened that we had a little extra time with Brady when he was on, and so I opened it up to the other people on the call. So I want to do that now, just either for a
sure.
comment or a question. Does anyone have a
Yeah,
comment or a question from the audience?
that would be great.
I have a question, and
Mhm.
it's the same sort of one that I asked. Well, that I thanked Brady for saying that he liked the mail-in ballots, and you asked Kelly about paper ballots. I don't know. I would like to know how she feels about mail-in ballots.
Okay.
So I think where I land on the elections across the board is I've had people tell me they love mail-in ballots passionately, and people who tell me the same thing about paper ballots. And so what I really appreciate is the system that we have now, where we have a number of different options for people, and people can do what they feel comfortable with. Because at the same time that I wouldn't want to tell someone they have to do mail-in ballots, I wouldn't want to tell someone they have to do paper ballots. And so what I would love to do is land with choices for people. And if we need to plug some holes on election integrity in each of those, I'm happy to do that. We need to look at each one and make sure that there's integrity in it for people. But I land on choices because we found that that's very popular in Utah. And so I think we need to make sure that each person feels comfortable with the way that they're voting. It's a big deal. So.
And one more question. So there's been some people have been talking about, well, Kelly doesn't agree with tax cuts. I would like to hear what you have to say about tax cuts. I know that income tax is tied to education, so I just want to hear from you how you feel about that.
Yeah, I answered this at the last debate, and constitutionally, income tax money is for education, and it is for our neighbors with special needs and with disabilities. And so I know that, for example, there's 6,000 people waiting on a waiting list who qualify for some disability benefits. And so until we can tackle that, and we're taking care of the most vulnerable people in our communities, I don't really love the income tax reduction, and partly because it's so small. I know I've seen some numbers that say $700, but I checked with Utah Taxpayers Association, and they said closer to 300. And so I don't know about everybody else, but sadly, I blow that at Target on a regular basis. And I would rather that be spent on our friends and neighbors who need some services. Now, as far as regular, other places where we can cut taxes, that's one of the reasons that I'm running, is because we see lots of mandates that come down from the state that make it where we have to raise property taxes. And that is a more regressive form of tax. I would rather see that on people who make income than people who don't. And I definitely don't want to tax people out of their homes.
Mhm. Well, Kelly, thank you. And it's been good getting to know you better through this process.
Thank you. This
It's
was very kind of you, Rob. This was a lot of work behind the scenes, everyone, for Rob to put this together with all of us. So it was very kind to do.
And I want to give you 15 seconds to 30 seconds just to wrap up any last thoughts from you, and then that'll end our meeting for today. So,
Okay, great. I think one of the main reasons that I'm running is a perspective that we don't see very often in the legislature. We're still small business owners, own small businesses in Pleasant Grove. I taught school, and I'm on a local government. And so if you look at many of the legislators that are out there, they don't have that broad and deep experience. And we write a lot of laws that affect those three things. And so I think what I can bring to that is a deep understanding of those issues, and maybe a way to look at red flags that would cause us to have to raise taxes on those local levels, whether that's we tax a business and then they pass it on to someone, or we require uh, more red tape and restrictions on cities so that they have to use staff in a way they wouldn't have to. And so we raise costs there. And especially on education, I want education decisions to be made as locally as possible. So I would love for state government to send the money without strings and let parents and local boards decide where that money would be the most impactful. And so I think, as Republicans, we love small government, we love local control, and those are two things that I'm super passionate about.
awesome. Well, thank you so much again. And I think the last thing I want to do, it is a shameless plug for my website. It's
Awesome.
wethepeoplemeet.org. And I truly believe that we agree more than we disagree. And this is a website that me and a few people that actually disagreed with me politically all agreed that, hey, if we start a website together, that we can share how we feel. And I'm opening up. That's why I'm hesitating a little bit.
No,
But if
you're
we
okay.
share how we feel, then we can bridge this gap that it seems like everyone's pushing us to fight and disagree and
Yeah.
whatnot. But I'm sharing my screen. We the People Meet, bringing Americans together to protect the Constitution and find common ground. Because I think one common thing about Americans from all sides is that we believe the Constitution is what's made us successful, and that I believe we can find common ground as we talk respectfully to each other. And so, yeah, just want to encourage everyone to join the meetings when we have them. Um, if you want to become part of it and be invited to the meetings, you can email contact@wethepeoplemeet.org, and then you'll get an invite each time we have a meeting like this to come to the meetings. So, anyway,
That's
that's it.
awesome. Thanks
Thanks
so
everyone
much.
for
Appreciate that work.
joining. Yeah,
Thank
great.
you,
Okay.
Rob. Thanks for doing this, Rob. Appreciate
Yep.
it.
Have a great
Thanks
day,
so much,
everyone.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye bye.